thing on? All right, my name's Rob. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Rob.
I promised not to read from this, but I did take a few notes just in case I get stuck. I am a little bit nervous. So, Rob, alcoholic. It's good to be here tonight. It's good to start off the new year here with my home group, primary purpose group. So thanks y'all for coming out. I was kind of hoping more of y'all will be out watching the football games tonight, and there wouldn't be but a handful of us, but I am glad that you're here, and the new folks as well, Tinley and the gentleman over here. I didn't catch his name. This is my home group. As many of you know, I came in December 1st, 2013. That is my sobriety date. Brad, before the meeting, patted me on the shoulder and said, look what sobriety can do for you. And Brad was here the first night I came in here. Obviously he's been here ever since. And Brad and Steve and many members of this group have been integral parts of my sobriety. So without y'all, I don't have to tell you guys there's a tremendous amount of sobriety in this room. And new guys like myself, I got a little over a year here, but I'm still just a baby as far as AA goes, and I'm well aware of that. So I guess my point in all that is that I've learned a lot from you guys, and I hope that I have something worthwhile to share here this evening. I was born and raised in South Florida, a small coastal town on the east coast of Florida. Up until about 10, 11 years old, had, kind of all-American middle-class family. Mom was a nurse, dad sold cars, had two older sisters, lived in a neighborhood, certainly had everything we needed as far as food on the table and a roof over our head. So no real complaints, no real reason, no real indication early on. The thing that really stands out to me from early on in my childhood is kind of playing around the neighborhood. I was always uneasy with my buddies early on, Even to this day, I have a hard time making friends with guys my age. So that was the case early on. The way I dealt with that and kind of all the way up until sobriety, we'd be on playing football or basketball or whatever, and I'd kind of get physical and didn't really know how to interact with guys and just kind of be a good friend. And so I'm still learning how to do that today. My first drink was about 11, 12 years old. Nothing really stands out for it about that experience for me, but except that, the experience was I was with a buddy. We were dog sitting the neighbors, and we kind of grew up, looking up to all the guys and all the dads in the neighborhood. They'd get off work and they'd crack a few beers in the backyard, and a few of them would let loose, and we thought that was pretty neat growing up. And so about, like I said, 10, 11, 12 years old, dog sitting, and the dad of the neighborhood that probably drank the most always had the fridge in the garage, and that was something I aspired to having, was a tall fridge about this tall, just floor to ceiling, and cold beer. And so we went over there to walk the dogs one day, and I had the bright idea that we'd snatch ourselves a few cold beers and run out to the backyard and crack those things. And we did so, and again, don't really remember a lot from that experience. I know we didn't finish the beers. I think I had a couple sips, and then we tossed them and kind of went our own ways back to our houses, for fear that we'd get in trouble or whatever. But the thing that does stand out to me about that experience was that the next day I went back, by myself, and I didn't think much of that experience then, certainly, and didn't for a lot of years until I got sober and eventually started working the steps and took a look at my drinking. But from that first experience with alcohol, of going back by myself to get more beer the next day, I think I drank one beer that day. I was just a little boy, but drinking alone was just, that's what I did. I very, very rarely drank in the company of other people. I wasn't comfortable doing that ever, even as an adult. Just preferred to drink alone and kind of, woe is me mentality, and I'll get into some of that here shortly. But my parents ended up getting divorced, and they split up, and I'm not going to stand up here and tell a fifth step, but there's some things with my father early on that I had a lot of resentment towards him for a lot of years up until I made amends here recently in the last year. But so I chose not to spend much time with my father as a teenager and in high school. And my mother, she was a nurse, as I mentioned earlier, and she moved to this small condo 2 blocks from the beach. And where I grew up, you drank in 2 places. You drank either out in the orange groves and the citrus groves out west of town, a couple miles, or you drank at the beach because the parks closed at sundown, and then you could pretty much drink without it getting into too much trouble and without being bothered by the law enforcement. So that was a pretty neat setup for me to be right there as a 13, 14-year-old boy, young man, whatever it was. And my mom worked the night shift, which was a pretty good deal for me because I hung out with a lot of older guys. I'd kind of always done that, but especially early on too. I had 2 older sisters, and they were, at this point, they were kind of doing a lot of partying, drinking and drugging, and felt like there was a cop showing up at my house every night with bringing one of my sisters home. But I was hanging out with a lot of older guys that kind of did the beach scene thing, so I had a lot of access to alcohol. And I always, like I mentioned earlier, I've always had trouble kind of getting along with and talking to guys my age, my peers. That's why even to hang out with guys these days, guys even today in sobriety is still something I'm just getting used to. So hanging out with the older guys, and they were drinking a lot. And so I kind of had this access where I had a bed in my in my bedroom that I would keep. I'd pull the mattress up, and in it would be, I've always kind of been OCD about organizing things, and in it under the bed would be boxes of liquor and cases of beer, and I would steal my mom's money in order to facilitate those activities. But my mom was working night shift, which was pretty cool, so I would just be able to party down at the beach. And in those days, at that time, drinking really wasn't a problem for me. It was pretty fun. I was able to finally kind of talk to the girls, which Steve mentioned earlier. I got engaged. You can ask my fiance, but I'm still not the smoothest talker in the world. But I certainly wasn't in those days, puberty and so forth. And, so to be able to talk to girls was a pretty good deal. And I just remember a sense of freedom of kind of, it was something that kind of, throughout my whole story, I would drink by myself down at the beach a lot, and if there was a party going on, that was cool. And that was neat. And, sometimes I'd get up the courage to go talk to guys or gals or whatever and just kind of hang out and socialize like you probably should be doing at that age. But a lot of nights, I started to look forward to it about 15, 16 years old. My mom going to work and having, my drink under, my bedroom there, and sometimes just drinking in the house or going down to the beach. But it allowed me to kind of escape. I sort of, my entire drinking career was just sort of a tale of the drinking in isolation and then everything else. And for a long time that worked. I was able to do pretty well in school, and I was able to do okay in sports and so forth. And then I would drink on my own. And early on I thought it was just kind of an escape from all the, not fitting in at school and not being able to socialize properly and so forth. But I just had a lot of anxiety about being able to get along with any of my peers at school. And one point that kind of brings that home to me is I was involved with the student council or whatever at school, and I would do the morning announcements, and then I would leave school to go cut class, and then all I could think about, I was there in the morning with the vice principal doing the announcements, and all I could think about was escaping to the beach to go drink. And I kind of had that alcoholic obsession from about 15, 16 years old on until, just last year, about a year ago. And I left town, left for school. I went to a military school. As Steve stated, I'm transitioning out of the Army here next year, in the next few months. I went to military school up in New York, and that was pretty neat for a alcoholic in waiting or training, or hell, I might have been an alcoholic at this point. I'm not entirely sure, but we were right across the river from from a train station that was a 45-minute hour train station down in New York City. And so I quickly found out that I could sneak out after they came by and did the room checks on us there, and get down to the city and just pretty much drink all night and then be able to get back in the morning. And that worked for a couple months, and then that sort of became a problem. The deal at the school is that they come around at about 11 or 11:30 and do their checks, and they check again on you about 6 o'clock in the morning. And so I'd be able to make the midnight train, be down in the city by 1, drink until the sun came up, and then try and sober up somehow, some way on the hour train ride back up, and then make morning formation. And so that worked for a few months, my first few months there, until I started missing. These formations are just accountability, where they check on you and make sure you're still breathing and doing the right thing. And I would show up, drunk and hungover, and drunk and hungover, and drunk and hungover, and then I was not showing up. And then, and then the Army's got this thing they call the Army Substance Abuse Program. And the officer that was in charge of me said, "Hey, I think you might have a drinking problem." And I told him he was crazy, and that there was no way. I was just doing like I was supposed to do, which was have a good time at my age. And so he enrolls me in the Army Substance Abuse Program, and which consists of, I pretty much didn't have a say in the matter, which consists of going and doing, you get your urinalysis and your blood tests and your breathalyzers every day and so forth, and you meet with the counselor for a week, and then you're pretty much good to go. And I got involuntarily enrolled in that quite a few times while I was there, and learned how to basically sort of beat the system, basically. And I don't know if that was me beating the system or them just saying, "Hey, I don't know, we don't want to put up with your lies anymore." Because I would just get in there with the counselor and just tell her or him what they wanted to hear. Alcohol really started to become a problem for me there. I eventually graduated, but just by the skin of my teeth, frankly. Alcohol, I could not make it through a morning without obsessing about alcohol. And for me, what that looked like was, whether I was sitting in class or sitting in my room or whatever, all I could think about was when I was going to get the next drink. And I still hadn't become very good at socializing with people, and if they didn't want to drink like I drank or had a problem with the way I drank, I would just kind of get angry and violent. And that's sort of just how I was the entire time I was there. Sorry, I'm just kind of stuck. My last year there, I was able to go home for Christmas leave, Christmas break or whatever, winter break, and I went home, and I'd kind of had enough. Not only was I not able to have any sort of guy friends or many girlfriends for that matter, I was also, my relationship with my family was starting to deteriorate pretty quickly, and I was extremely resentful towards my father for, again, just kind of some of the things that had happened earlier on, and kind of continually it was happening, and I was really unwilling to take a look at myself and the role that alcohol had started to play in my life. So I was kind of at the point of of desperation. I was reading earlier. I was reading the book earlier, and I'll just reference it real quick. But on page 37, I just really identify this, and at this point in my story is kind of where I was at. But I had a lot of justifications for drinking, and in the book it's talking about how I had nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, and that I had all these justifications for these sprees that I was going on. And my mother, God bless her, she put up with a lot of my nonsense. A lot of coming home and being angry and slamming the door and throwing beer bottles against the wall and throwing beer bottles at her, which I can't believe I did, but I did that. and just generally just being kind of angry and confrontational with my drinking. And I had all these justifications. Mom, I'm working hard. Dad, I'm working hard at school. I'm trying to do the right thing in life, and just let me drink the way I want to drink. And the book, I just really identify this, but it says that insanely insufficient. These justifications were insanely insufficient, and in light of what always happened. And what always happened to me was that I would get drunk and black out. Usually say some things that would cut right to the heart of the people I love the most. I kind of, for whatever reason, I always knew exactly what was going to cut right to the heart of them. And I said those things. The most hurtful things, you could possibly say to parents, to friends, to family, to sisters, to loved ones, people you truly cared about. And thankfully, because of this program, I've been able to make amends for a lot of those things. In the last year. But anyway, so this particular, I was home on my last, I was about 6 months out from graduation, and I'd had enough, and I decided I didn't want to go into the Army. I just kind of wanted to die, and so, I started drinking early on that morning, and I would just drink by myself, the same thing I always did. I had kind of this area out near these citrus farms that I used to go drink by myself whenever I was in town and up by this lake. And I spent all morning and all early afternoon doing that. And in the Army, you've got a lot of access to firearms, and you become pretty good at, I guess, having them around and being comfortable with them. And so I had a few at the house and decided that was the way I was going to take my life. And I loaded up my backpack. I don't know what I was thinking, but I loaded up my backpack like I was taking a damn weekend trip somewhere or something. I had my bottle. It was like half empty, the second bottle from that day, and the firearm, and I kid you not, like some underwear, spare t-shirt and so forth for some reason. I remember my sister after the fact going, "What the hell were you thinking with that stuff?" And I'm like, "I don't know," but anyway, man, I was done. I'd had enough, and I basically, I'm texting family members, telling them, "Hey, love you, see you later, I'm out," kind of thing. It was a little more gruesome than that, but that was the gist of it. I was in this canal, like kind of near where we live, off of 8th Street in my town there, and somehow, I don't know how, but my sister had called the police, basically frantically saying, "Hey, my brother's about to kill himself." And in Florida, there's this thing called the Baker Act, where if you think someone's suicidal or needs help, or you need some intervention from law enforcement, they'll come and swoop you up. And looking back on it, I'm a mess. And I have no reason to be a mess. There's my father growing up, he used to tell me, he said, "Son, you got life by the tail. If you could just now get out of your own way, you'd be pretty good. You'd be pretty all right." And I was fortunate, to do all right in most things in my life, but this damn alcohol thing, I just couldn't kick it. And I was kind of, I was at the end of my rope, and I was ready to take my life, and I'd pushed everybody, loved ones, away from me. To the point where I had really nobody to live for, live with, and nothing to live for at this stage. And sure enough, I was there, bottle, and I don't know if it was in my hand or in my lap, but it was out of the bag. I'd been taking what I thought were going to be my last pulls. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I just wanted to get a few more in me, but and I had the weapon out, and the police came, and it turns out I wasn't quite ready to take my life, because I suppose the weapon was loaded. I didn't pull the trigger. So anyway, they grabbed me and took me to what it basically amounts to a mental hospital, psych ward, and detox facility there in my hometown. And I was only there a couple of days. My mom, for all she saw and all she put up with, I don't think she ever thought, until I told her that I was an alcoholic here, about a year ago, 13 months ago. I don't think she ever was willing to admit that, and she was pretty much in denial because I was kind of her only son, and I'd always done okay in life except for this part of it. And so when I got one call and called her up, and within 3 days I was out of there. I said the right things to the therapist, and they let me out. I went back up to New York and finished out school there. And my drinking pretty much continued. It got progressively worse, just like the book says. It's always going to get always worse and never better. And I would hold out. The military would send me through training for 30 days or 60 days or what have you. And I'd say to myself, see there, you didn't drink for that whole month. You're not an alcoholic. You held out that long and you were fine. You're not an alcoholic. And the other thing that stands out from some of that Army training, I would get done and I'd come out of it, having detoxed and, not had a thing to drink, gone through the shakes and then been fine for several weeks and come out of it and I'd drink, like I'd never miss a beat, and oftentimes it was just a lot worse than before. I deployed in 2012 and went to Afghanistan and stuff, and I'm not going to say much more about that, but that, there were some experiences there that definitely didn't help things, and so I further isolated myself when I came back. Guys that I came home with, we all had money in our pockets, and some of those experiences kind of leave you thinking that you can handle anything, and I already thought that about myself. So this alcoholism thing really started to take flight when I came home at the end of 2012, and for about the next 12 months thereafter. And what that looked like for me was, I was most comfortable. I say most comfortable, but I was a damn nervous wreck. But I was most comfortable, at the bar by myself, and the worst, darker, shadier bar possible, the better. I didn't want to really be around anybody that was there laughing or having a good time. I wanted to be miserable, and I wanted everybody around me to be miserable. I wanted to drink like I wanted to drink, and I didn't want you to say anything to me about it. And when I said to the bartender, I'll take another, I wanted you to give me another, and if you tried to cut me off, there was going to be, a problem kind of thing. And so those were the kind of bars I enjoyed hanging out at. And if there was nobody there, even better. If the bartender was just there, and then, my selfish alcoholic mind, if the bartender was just there serving me drinks, even better. Because they came to work to serve me drinks. And that was why they were put on this earth by God, was to serve me drinks. And so I would come home. I was living over in Fayetteville with two guys who maybe eventually we'll see them in here one day. But, when I would come home from the bars and they'd say, man, you're hammered, you got to get a grip. And I would not go to work the next day, and I'd come home angry for nothing, I mentioned throwing beer bottles earlier. I like to do that for some reason when I drink. And so if you ever catch me back out there, watch out. But, I'd wake up in the morning, and we had this wood laminate, not real wood laminate in the living room there, in the apartment we lived in. And I'd wake up, and there'd be a bed of glass on the in the living room, and and nobody would clean it up, and we'd have to walk around with shoes on in the house for like a couple weeks, because it was just this vicious cycle where we'd throw stuff and break stuff and constantly drinking. And so that kind of continued, and so my fiance was in school in Florida, and so I would spend a lot of weekends going down there, and I loved that because one of the things I did a lot of, and I did every time. It was funny when I finally got sober. I said, "Man, I just drove to Florida without drinking the whole way. I haven't done that in like 6 or 7 years." And so I would probably drive to Florida 2 weekends a month, and from here in Fayetteville, and I kind of had my standard routine. I pick up enough to get me down there, which was usually an 18-pack or a bottle of fifth, or sometimes I'd tell myself I'm just going to drink wine on this trip. So I would just I'm going to be real good, and I'm not going to be drunk when I get there and angry at my girlfriend for no reason other than the fact that I'm so drunk. And so I would just drink and drive, and I hope when I meet my Creator one day that He can let me know why the hell He let me get away with that so many times. Hopefully hopefully I have a full life in sobriety, and maybe it's to be useful in sobriety. I'm not sure, but I would drive down to Florida, and one particular evening I got pulled over twice. If you've ever driven into Gainesville, Florida, right before you get there, there's these small towns where there's a few prisons and a lot of speed traps. And one evening I was driving down there, and I, like I said, I probably had 12 or 15 beers in me at this point. And, kind of what I did, I would keep a jacket on the passenger seat. And so I would throw the empties on the floorboard, and then, I would throw the jacket over it in case I got pulled over. And this particular night I got pulled over twice. And, I would do everything. I would have everything set up. I'd have the jacket there. I would stay in uniform so that I was going down there. So if a guy pulled me over, hell, I'm in uniform. I'm an upstanding citizen. And had a whole story prepared, and I had the gum there and the cologne to spray myself. I was like ready. I was like bound and determined. And so I would think through a lot of this stuff just so that nothing would interfere with me drinking and then getting there and then taking her straight to the bar. So I got pulled over, and guy asked me where I was headed, and I said, I'm heading to Gainesville. And he said, I was so drunk, and I just remember him asking me, well, what are you doing when you get there? And I said, I reckon we're heading to the bars. And he said, okay. He said, you been drinking tonight? I said, no, sir. And he said, okay. And I thought for sure that was it. I was heading to jail. And he went back to his car, came back, and handed me a speeding ticket and said, have a nice night. And off I went. So to celebrate, I crack open a beer, start driving again, turn the music back up, and then 5 minutes later in the rearview mirror, blue lights again, and same guy. I said, he said, and I don't know how the heck he didn't smell it on me. When I rolled down that window, I had an old Jeep at the time. When I rolled down that window, it must have just been a waft of just pure alcohol in the air and on my breath and everything else. Like, I almost feel like it's a cruel joke that God played on me or something to let me go. I have no idea, but I'm kind of glad He did. But pulled me over, and he said, we meet again. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, where are you headed? And I said, I'm heading to Gainesville still. And he said, are you sure about that? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, why? I said, why? And he said, well, because now you're heading west on a road that doesn't go towards Gainesville. And I said, yeah, I was just looking for a gas station. He said, well, you passed about 4 or 5 of them between where I last pulled you over and here. And I said, yes, sir, I'll turn around then and go to one of those. He said, good idea, here's another speeding ticket. And I eventually made it down there that night, but and that's, at the time I was, of course, nervous as hell and thought I was going to jail. But, I got down there, and the thing that strikes me about all those trips down to Florida, and drinking, how selfish that act was. There's other people on the highway. I drove down I-95 all the way down there, and then west on I-10, but all the other people down there on the highway, and families and kids and all the rest. And I just didn't care. I had to drink. There was no way I was going to be able to make it 6 or 7 hours or 8 hours down there without my alcohol in me. And I didn't care what happened or if I got in an accident or anything else. I had to have it. I mentioned the Baker Act thing and going to the mental hospital there, and that was, that I never went back there, but I still continue to have thoughts of suicide and suicidal ideations or whatever you call them, but that was something that I just couldn't. what I'm getting at is I was getting to a point to where, I couldn't live with alcohol, and I couldn't live without it, and it had literally become, this thing that I worshipped and this thing that I obsessed about. Back to what my dad said, you do all right in life if you just get out of your own way. And I started to tell myself that if I could just get out of my own way, that I would be all right and be able to handle things in life. And so there was a period of time in the last year of my drinking where several times, I would try to quit drinking on my own without the program Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's it was just a sad state looking back on it, because I would be, I mentioned the drinking and driving. That's a lot of times what I would do is I had no solution. I haven't been presented this solution by y'all yet. It's in our, it's this program that I love so much today. And so I would, I'd be driving around town and listening to music, and I used to just drink while I was driving around town and kind of peer in at people laughing and seemingly having a good time at the bars. So I didn't really want to go actually meet anybody. I just wanted to be in my own little world. So then I would stop doing the drinking part, and I would still drive around town, and I'd pass by one liquor store, and I'd pass by one convenience store, and then another one, and then pretty soon I'd say, oh hell, what's the use in this? And I'd be right back where I started, drinking again, unable to maintain anything like a healthy romantic relationship, unable to have any friends that I truly cared about. A lot of them cared about me deeply and did a lot for me, bailed me out of a lot of situations with the police, and kept me from getting in a lot of fights that I had no business being in, outside of bars and so forth, like some of us guys do. But I wasn't ever there for them. If it was a matter of, hey Rob, can you come pick me up or whatever, my first reaction was to lie and to go for a drink. The other thing I'll say, about my drinking is, this really stands out to me, and that I sort of realized when I went through the 4-step, 5th step with my sponsor, is that, anytime there was a big event going on, whether it was a birthday, a holiday, any event where I was supposed to be responsible and accountable, I could not handle that pressure. Something so simple as, Kelly asked, hey, you want to go to dinner, watch the game? I couldn't show up for that. I was incapable of just being there for a buddy. And for whatever reason, I was too anxious. I was too anxious that I'd get there and say the wrong thing, not be the guy that, the buddy that you wanted, and so forth. And so I just was never comfortable in my own skin. So any kind of thing, holiday, like I said, especially, or any kind of big event, I did not show up at all. And if I did, I was sufficiently intoxicated so that, when I made a fool out of myself, not if, but when, I either embarrassed myself or my family or my friends or the hostess, I was so well lubricated that I just didn't care anymore. And so the last night I drank was Thanksgiving, or the Saturday after Thanksgiving, 2013. It was kind of no different. It doesn't really stand out to me as any kind of different experience than so many that I'd had. I woke up that morning and all I could think about was, where am I drinking today, and am I gonna have enough sufficiently available within arm's reach throughout the day to get me through the day. And oh, by the way, I was home in Florida, so there's going to be family members around, and they've all made snarky comments about my drinking. So I need to get sufficiently drunk so that when I actually have to talk to these people, I don't really care what I say. That's kind of where I was at. It was no different than any other experience I had at home from that standpoint. The same selfishness and the same inability to get through the day without alcohol. And one of the things I did a lot of in those situations is I would kind of find an ally. kind of a scapegoat. And this scapegoat this day was my brother-in-law, who, his 40th birthday was like 2 weeks from then, but I wanted to celebrate it early with him, and that would kind of be that particular day, that would be my scapegoat for the way I'd planned on drinking that day. So I took him to the bar. The bar opened at 10 o'clock, and we were there at 10 o'clock on the dot and started drinking, and drank all morning, all afternoon. And my sister, I convinced her to throw him a party for his 40th birthday, and somehow we made it from, I drove drunk a lot, as you can probably tell, but somehow we made it from the bar that day to my sister and brother-in-law's house. And my sister had gone to great lengths to host a great party for my brother-in-law, decorated the house, had all the family and friends over that we all, that all cared about him and us so much. And we came stumbling in the front door, hooting and hollering and carrying on like we always did, and just kind of really embarrassing, unable to stand straight, or hold a conversation with anybody there. And somebody said something to me that I don't even remember what it was at the time, but it was probably like, how you doing or whatever. And I was like I mentioned, I was incapable of engaging with anybody. And when somebody said that to me, it was like, hey, what's going on? I immediately got angry for some reason and started throwing things like I always did. And, and my sister's trying to calm me down. And then my other sister comes over, and then I just remember standing there in the living room doing this number, like, I always trying to stand up straight. And just being just an absolute embarrassment. And then I said some things to my stepmom that luckily I've been able to make amends for. But, I'd gotten to the point where I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I packed my bags, left the house, packed my bags. And I knew that I couldn't go on living like that, and so I decided that I'm not really sure what made that time any different, but I decided that I was going to drive home up to North Carolina that night, up 95. And this was at almost midnight. I left Florida, and and I've been drinking for, like I said, about 12 hours. So what kind of state I'm in at this point, and it was just sad. I was crying, and I was driving up 95, and I just had kind of gotten to the point where I couldn't face myself. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I knew that I was incapable of having anything that resembled a healthy relationship, friendship, anything. Could not go about anything in life without alcohol present. So I just remember, from that drive, I was obviously very drunk, but I just remember, crying and crying out to God and just saying, God, help me, And that was kind of probably the first point where I was willing to admit that, I didn't really know that if there was a God or if He cared about me much or if there was anything that could help me at this stage. I wanted to kill myself a lot, but I just kind of cried out to God. And I remember I got home, and my fiance, we've been together about 3.5 years, but so she went through a lot of this with me and supported me the whole way. But she lives in Chapel Hill, and she came down to Southern Pines to meet. I was living in Southern Pines at this point, and came down to meet me in my apartment. And I almost, she didn't leave me. I almost wish she did. But I had hit a point where I just said, I don't know if I'm about to lose everything. I know I should have lost everything at this point in my life. But the way I'm living, I'm not living. I'm just kind of existing. At best existing, and at worst, rapidly deteriorating. I was sick all the time. I remember coming out of my apartment a lot, and I couldn't even walk out of the apartment without, I was just fearful all the time. I'd walk out of the apartment and kind of look around the corner and check behind the bushes and check behind the house, and have to do a lap around the block before I would get in my car, because I was just kind of like paranoid that somebody was out to get me. And that was, I think, looking back on it, that was just probably my conscience knowing that it was time. I was kind of down for the count if I didn't get some help. And so I did. I came in, didn't go to detox, but I came in on, December 1st and 13. And I just remember that first meeting. I don't really remember a lot of what was said at that meeting. I remember meeting a few people, Tom and Brad and Delos and Daniel and a couple others and Steve. But I just remember when y'all read the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, I didn't really comprehend what was being said, but I knew at that point that what y'all were telling me was that I was in the right place. I just remember sitting there. I think Dana was there that night too, and I remember her that first night. But just tears running down my face and kind of just like paralyzed to the seat going, I know I'm not supposed to cuss in here, but well, damn it, I'm in the right spot. And anyway, and so it's been, and that, I don't remember anything magical happening that first night or shortly thereafter, but, I did eventually link up with Steve, who's my sponsor, and he presented, and you all presented, this great home group presented, the solution of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm thoroughly convinced that without this program, there's no way that I would be standing here tonight, and I was ready to end it, so many times, and if I was wanting to kill myself and maybe take a few of y'all out with me when I walked in these doors. And today, the difference between then and now is today, there's no place I'd rather be. And this is like truly a family. It's just a family, and the people I love most probably, are probably folks in Alcoholics Anonymous and people that have given me, a new chance at life, and have presented a solution that we see in the first 164 pages of our book, and not just told me about it. The big key for me was that y'all showed me what AA is all about through your actions, and that's something I was real skeptical, and I was going to find you out when I walked in the door, because I knew that y'all were just full of it, but you're not. You're real and you're honest. And that's a pretty good deal for a guy who didn't know how to be honest with himself, much less anybody else. And so when I come in these doors, and y'all have been welcoming and continue to be welcoming, and I hope I'm able to do that for other folks too. But the smiles and the laughter and the handshakes and the just knowing that you guys understand, you've been where I've been. You might have had a slightly different experience as far as where you were on planet Earth and who you interacted with, but by and large, it's the same thing, and that's a pretty good deal, and that helps to keep me sober. I've worked the steps with my sponsor. Steve's my sponsor, and he mentioned earlier that starting to work with some new guys, and that's just been a great experience. And when I first came in, you guys mentioned, hey, the new guy, the old timers get more from the new guys than the other way around. And I don't know if that's true or not. And frankly, I don't know if it matters, but we all get something from each other. And that's a pretty good deal, And one of the things that Steve told me early on, he said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And so shut up and just listen. And when I came in, I probably thought I had a lot of answers, and I obviously didn't. So it's weird for me to get up here and speak tonight, but I do appreciate y'all having me, and it's great to share my story, and it's given me another opportunity to be honest with myself and to be honest with you all, and I'm just so very thankful for everything that you guys share. And one point I just, as I was thinking about speaking tonight, I wanted to make this point, and that's that, early on, and again, I still see myself as just a an infant in this thing, just a baby as far as this program goes. And I hope, one day at a time, but I hope I'm here a long time. And the point I'm getting to is that, I really kind of just soaked it up, and I think a lot of newcomers soak a lot of what is said at these meetings, just kind of soak it up like a sponge. And there's so much wisdom that gets shared in these meetings, whether it's Monday night or tonight or the other great groups around town and around the country. And we, I'm very thankful for the wisdom that gets shared regularly at those meetings, and that comes from experience. And then the other point is, like I said, you guys, somebody told me in this group, he said, don't talk about it, be about it. And you guys are, you are about it. And by that I mean you show by action. And that's something, Steve has emphasized in my recovery, and something I try to do. And it's hard to be as active as he and some of the others in this group, but, sponsoring a guy and, going to detox, with my sponsor, when I'm asked to, and going down to the colony and meeting with guys and talking to those folks there that are coming through that program that's just a blessing. That's great. There's nothing better than just meeting with fellow alcoholics, and especially the new folks that are coming up. So I'll just finish with that. Thanks very much for having me, guys, and for letting me speak.